Welcome to the Petty Details of Auto Claims. I'm Jen. This is Justin. And today we are talking about diminished value, finally. So I'm just going to let Justin take it away because he has plenty to say about it.
Yeah, I mean, diminished value is tough. Insurance carriers are very resistant to a diminished value claim. They are typically going to just pretend like they know how to calculate it or tell you that there's no way that it can be calculated. There's no formula for diminished value. Well, that's a trick. That's a play on words. That's a semantics issue. It has nothing to do with diminished. Diminished is an adjective. So we're talking about the value of a vehicle, and you can measure that in 2 points in time. So just to quickly give you the concept of diminished value, your car is wrecked, it's repairable, it's not totaled, and the repair cost, let's say that really doesn't matter, but let's just say it takes $10,000 to repair your car, and your car was worth $30,000 to start out with. And now it's got a $10,000 repair history. That car will not trade for the same amount because of that accident history. It's got a bad Carfax. The risk of one, even if it's not on the Carfax, it's still got the risk of it being on there. And you can't lie. That's fraud. When you sell the car, you've got to, if they ask you about it, you've got to tell them it was in a
Gotta
wreck.
disclose.
And
Yeah.
anybody that, yeah, so, and all they have to do is get somebody like me or somebody else to walk around it with a mill gauge, do a visual inspection. We can tell it's been repaired. The
Right.
paint is not the same. The thickness isn't the same. The seam sealer typically isn't identical. And so all of these different things that you can, this is the reason why diminished value exists, because you can never be sure the vehicle is properly repaired until that repair is tested in another crash. So it's just that risk. It's a market reality. Every state with the exception of Massachusetts and New York right now, New York has a split on authority. If someone else is at fault for your loss, if someone was negligent and caused damage to your vehicle, they would owe you for the diminished value. That is an element of your loss, with the exception of a couple of states, like I said, Massachusetts right now, and New York has got a split of authority, so it's a little hard there, but they do pay those claims. So you just got to be careful when you're in those two states to make sure you're not wasting money on an
An
appraisal.
appraisal.
But as
Yeah.
far as diminished value is concerned, I mean, I think here's the trick for diminished value is understanding that you're going to be in a fight and that you're going to have to typically accept less than how much the diminished value is, because the alternative is you sue the at-fault driver. You don't have any legal recourse. There's an exception, of course, in Georgia. You have first party diminished value, and go back and look at our first party versus third party to understand what I'm talking about there. But in Georgia, your own insurance company has to pay you diminished value. But in every other state, that's not the case. And so it's like you have to understand that they're just going to argue about the amount, and you've got to have a big enough claim to make it worth pursuing, to spend the money
Yeah.
on an appraisal and get the help of an expert. So it's just a tricky type of claim, and you have to really have a good expert that will help you, you know, without crossing that line of legal help. So it's
Yeah.
really it's really a difficult claim to get resolved, but it is a valid claim, and with the right pressure, you can get a settlement and buffer your loss. That's the way I always put it. Is like you can
Yeah.
buffer it. You can
The
at
hardest
least
part too
get some
is
of that
like
money back.
the hardest part is the after you get the appraisal. People are always like really worried about getting the appraisal, but really the hard part's the going back and forth, knowing what to say to their low offers and denials, knowing what your rights are and how far you can take it. Because if you make empty threats, they'll be like, whatever.
Yeah, that's a good point. So knowing all the arguments that insurance companies make, throw a couple out, and I'll give some sample reasons why that's not a defense to diminished value.
We don't know for it in Texas.
Okay, that has happened. So that's good. It's happened because you have an ignorant adjuster that doesn't understand the difference between first party and third party claims. They
Right.
don't owe it on a first party claim in Texas.
Right.
And so they might say that hoping that you don't understand how that works, what a first party claim and a third party claim. If they say that to you, have them put it in writing, and then they've lied to you. and then they may be in some trouble because lying to you is a violation of the general duty of good faith.
Now,
So they owe you a duty to treat you fairly.
talk about when they can file against their own insurance carrier, because that gets, here in Texas, if it's an uninsured or underinsured motorist, then if you have the property damage coverage, you can file with your own insurance carrier, but that is the only instance, and it's just as hard.
Yeah, so that's a good point. You can get diminished market value from your own insurance company if someone else was at fault for the accident and they don't have enough insurance or they don't have insurance and you have uninsured, underinsured motorist coverage for property damage. That also opens up the ability to recover attorney's fees. So a lot of times if you have an uninsured or underinsured motorist claim, you have diminished value and loss of use, you can recover from your own UMPD coverage. And that also comes with the threat of if you hire an attorney, they may have to pay attorney's fees. And so, because it's a hybrid, if you will, it's your own policy. So it's a contract, which opens it up to attorney's fees, but also it pays as if it were a negligence claim, as if it were a liability uh, claim on somebody else's policy. So yeah, you can get it from your own insurance if the other person's underinsured or uninsured and you have that coverage. You can definitely file that claim and get it. So that's a good point. And
I
we've had
wanted to
that
mention
happen
that
before.
because
Real
of Tom
quickly,
Martino, talking about it on Tom Martino. He didn't know, so it's good to mention.
yeah, and one of the things that we had a claim not too long back, maybe 6 months, a year ago, where a pretty well-known insurance company, the guy filed a claim with his collision coverage because he had $30,000 worth of repairs to do to this $60,000 car. And the other person, they only had $25,000 available for coverage. And so instead of trying to go after just the 25,000, he just went ahead and went through his insurance company and got the $30,000 repair cost paid for. And then they're going to subrogate. So his insurance company is going to recover the 25,000 from the at fault person's insurance company. And so when they do that, there is no more insurance available to pay for his diminished value or his loss of use. And so I told him, I said, look, file an underinsured motorist claim because you've still got loss of use and diminished value that is not covered by your collision coverage. Well, his insurance company told him, you can't do that. You have to pick. You have to pick collision or pick, and once you pick one, you can't mix them. Lie, just a big lie. That's not how that works whatsoever. We helped the guy, threatened to file a complaint with the Department of Insurance, proved up the statute, showed the adjuster completely where he's completely wrong about it, and guess what that company did? They didn't want a problem. They paid the entire diminished value claim immediately because they were caught in a lie. Their adjuster just lied to the guy and just said, "Oh, you can't do that." So
Yeah.
don't trust the adjuster at all whenever you're
And
dealing with
like
a
that's
claim.
odd too that for them to pay the full claim, because typically they're going to give you a low offer and you're going to have to get it somewhere in the middle there between zero and your dollar that you have on your appraisal. So it's shocking that they would pay the full amount.
Yeah, and that segues into the other problem with diminished value claims is if you're dealing with one, you know this. You can't find an attorney to help you. It's it's most diminished value claims are under $15,000, and that is just too little of an amount to go after for an attorney. So you are left like swimming with sharks on your own with no attorney help, and that makes these claims even harder. You have to be willing to file a small claim suit, do the work to do that. We'll have another
That needs to be our next
episode on
video.
small
I was just
claims.
thinking about that.
Uh,
Yeah.
I mean, and you got to understand, I'm not an attorney. My background is in litigation. I came from insurance litigation, so I've literally filed thousands and thousands of small claim suits as the recovery director for different insurance companies. So that's an exception to the rule. If you work for a corporation, you can go to small claims court. So I've done that lots and lots of times. That's sort of what got me involved in doing what I do because it's very niche. You know what I mean? Attorneys don't want property damage. You call an attorney that handles these types of claims, they're going to tell you we don't do property damage. And unless they have somebody like me in their back pocket that works with them, they just will avoid property damage claims like the plague. So insurance companies take advantage of the limited help that you're able to get on diminished values. You have to be aggressive. You have to have a
Yeah.
good expert that'll help you in the background. That like you said earlier, the biggest thing is, what do I do next? What do I do next? Well, they sent me a letter that said there's no formula for it. Yeah, well, there's no formula for injury claims either, but you settle those.
Yeah.
There's no
They sent me
formula
a
for
letter
total
that
loss
says
claims,
that
but you
your
settle those,
they sent me a letter
you
that says
know.
that your appraisal doesn't have this and this and this in it. And it's like, okay, well, who's the expert? Them or us? It's us.
Yeah.
It's us.
Well, it's like exactly that. It's like when they send you back a letter, like we have one right now with a big company that's normally not a problem. And this particular claim is just causing a problem because they don't understand appraisal standards. What I do when I write up a diminished value report, it's not a report, it's an appraisal. I'm following appraisal standards. They call them the uniform standards. And it's like the generally accepted appraisal standard. They do not teach that to insurance adjusters. I was the one that taught all of the insurance adjusters at every company I worked at what that was, so that when they got some BS diminished value demand, I could explain to them, look, that's not an actual appraisal. That's not going to hold up in court. You have to be able to put a credible threat in front of the insurance company. And even, like I said recently on another call, even if God himself writes the appraisal, these insurance companies are going to argue that they do not owe it because that's just an opinion. Well, it's not. It's an opinion developed using a methodology that's scientific, appraisal standards. And
Mm-hmm.
it is admissible evidence. It's the only evidence you can produce when you go to court. Your own testimony under the property owner's rule and an expert appraiser. That is the evidence that you produce for diminished value. That's it. That's all you can produce. You can try to use sales records and things
Dealer
like that, but then you
quotes, all the
you get into a
stuff.
big mess. Who's going to testify? How'd you get the quote? What
That
did
dealer
you,
ain't putting
was
nothing
the
in writing.
trade-in? There's a no, you need an expert, or if you have a small claim, I'm saying something like, you know, 4,000 and under. If you have a claim like that, you probably only can do small claims on your own and get a couple of thousand after that threat. You make the threat, you file the small claim suit. They've told you no, we're not paying DV, but as soon as the court date gets on the docket and they have to start paying an attorney for some expenses, for legal expenses, they will call and make a better offer 99% of the time. Sometimes they'll defend it, and that's what a lot of people don't understand is that it's not simple to file a small claim suit. That's what these insurance companies know. They
Yeah.
know that most people can't do it successfully. You need somebody helping you or an attorney, and that means you have to have a big enough claim. Talk about that recent one that we saw where all of us were like, what? Remember?
We got an email, and the insurance carrier was, it knocked me out of my seat. Like, I couldn't even breathe after. I was like, what? He said, we've reviewed the appraisal and we agree that the diminished value is $8,400 and or whatever, and that's what we're paying. And I was like, that's shocking. That is shocking. That does
Yeah,
not happen
yeah, I mean, I can count on my hand how many times
since we've
that has
opened.
happened. Yeah, 16 years of running this company, and maybe five times
Maybe.
you make the demand, and the insurance company says, "Oh yeah, okay, we're paying," and they just
That's
pay it,
even
But
that's
most of the
even
time, it's a
with
five.
companies that we do some work for now and again. They'll turn around, they'll hire us to work for the when it gets hard, they'll call Justin and want his legal advice or consultation, really. It is their attorneys that are asking him, and then they'll turn around and deny our appraisal, saying it's not valid or it doesn't have this, it doesn't have that. And
Yeah,
it's like, what?
I have literally been the subject matter expert for the defense attorney for multiple big insurance companies. They call me directly and say, "Hey, I need a diminished value assessment and your help. I'm fixing to sue somebody. My car got hit, my Lexus or my Mercedes, these are attorneys." And it's the defense attorney for big insurance companies. I've done that countless times. I'm on their call list. And then I send a demand in, And the claims department is like, oh yeah, that's BS, man. We don't believe petty. Well, your own defense attorney hires me.
Mm-hmm.
It's like make an offer to say you're not going to win. You're not
Yeah.
going to win it, but they just do it because it's economic for them. They know most people can't file a small claim suit, won't do it. It's too much trouble. And think
Well,
about if it's your neighbor that backed into your car and you
that's what I
don't
was gonna
want to sue
say.
that person.
So today I was talking to a woman and she has a $350 offer from Progressive. I'm just going to say the name because they all suck. Okay. So she has a $350 offer. Her claim is $6,800 on the appraisal. That's what our appraisal says. They
Yep.
called her and I listened to the phone call because she sent it to me, and it's the adjuster reading their form letter so that they sound like they know what they're talking about, going over what parts were repaired and what happened to the car and all the things that are in that form letter that they always send, and
Yeah.
wouldn't
Doing no
negotiate.
market research, but
Yeah.
telling you they know. Yep.
And not hiring an expert, and just saying like, well, too bad, we're digging our heels in. Well, the problem with hers is that she lives in a small town, local, sort of local, and she just took an admin position at a school, and the guy who hit her is a little old man that drives a school bus. So she ain't suing him. And so we had to have the hard conversation of, well, look, I mean, your only outlet is small claims, and you got to sue that guy, and you can't sue the insurance carrier. Got to sue the driver that hit you. So if you aren't willing to do
Well, and
that, you
that
better
gets
dig your
into
heels
it.
in.
That gets into another thing too, which is the Governmental Tort Claims Act, because the school district is a government entity. So those rules change.
Hmm.
You can still go after it, but those are even harder because
Yeah.
you've got to deal with the Governmental Tort Claims Act, which limits your time frame to 6 months and all kinds of different things
But
that.
I don't think he was driving a bus at the time. So that would be different
So he
then.
was personal. Yeah, that's different. Yeah,
Yes.
if he was working for the school when it happened, that's
Yes. But
different.
he calls
But if he
10
wasn't,
grand, over 10 grand of repairs to her car in a parking lot.
she's either going to have to, his insurance company should settle that claim. Progressive should not let him get sued. But if she wants to get any kind of recovery on that, she's going to have to file a small claims court,
I know.
suit against him. We've done that in May, I believe it was. We had two of them, and it was Progressive, and both of those were Progressive. They would not make a fair offer. We told our customer the same thing we're talking about right now. There's no other option. You either find an attorney and split the money with that person, with the attorney, or file a small claim suit and see what happens. And 99% of the time, I mean, I say that, sort of jokingly, but the vast majority of the time, they settle the claim. Both of those claims, they filed a small claim suit, got it on the docket, got a trial date, and a week before the trial date, they got a call and an offer for 88% of how much the diminished value was when they were offering, and it was similar. The first one I'm thinking about, they had a $7,000 claim. They settled it for like 6,000. And the
Yeah.
second guy had like a $6,500 claim. He settled it for like 5,500.
Yeah.
And they settled it by just filing a lawsuit and letting Progressive decide, do you want to spend the money to go defend it, or will you make a fair offer? And
Sometimes you just have to
they
show that
just
you're not
wait.
bluffing. Sometimes you just have to be like willing to file the suit, see what happens, because you ain't
Yeah,
going to get attorney help most likely.
yeah.
So, I mean, there
Well,
are some,
it's a
but
perfect
very few far between.
Well, and it's a perfect time for me to give this because we're at like 20 minutes on this video.
Yeah.
And I mentioned previously about the Rottweiler. So this is exactly the scenario with the Rottweiler. I tell people this all the time. It's an analogy, okay? If you're walking by a house and it's got a 6 foot tall chain link fence and it's got barbed wire or razor wire on the top of it. It's chained closed with a big chain and padlock. In the backyard, there's a big tree back there, and there's this big chain wrapped around the tree, and there's a Rottweiler chained to that tree, with a big old chain collar on him. That dog can sit there, snarl, bark, growl, stamp the ground, and do anything he wants to do while he's in the backyard. And you can stand right outside that fence and laugh your butt off at him and be like, what are you going to do? It's all
Mm-hmm.
bark, my friend. If the owner comes out and unlocks the gate and takes the chain off of him, guess what? That's a different scenario. You've got to be the unchained Rottweiler with the gate open. You've got to be a credible threat. You can bark, 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 but if you don't understand how to make a threat, how to show that it's a threat, fill out the small claims paperwork, send them a demand that says, look, I know how to file it. I'm going to file it 10 days from now. So make me a fair offer or I'm filing a lawsuit. Don't just send a letter, send the prepared lawsuit that hasn't been
Yeah.
filed to prove that you can file a lawsuit. I'll help
Yeah.
you understand how to do that. I'll refer you to an attorney that can walk you through that if need be. And so you can definitely, you have to be a credible threat. That's one of the things that I learned as a recovery director and subrogation specialist is they will ignore me too. But as soon as they realize that I'm suing every time, then all of a sudden they're like, oh, it's petty again. It's like, oh, it's going to be a small claim suit. I know it's going to be a small claim suit because it's petty,
Yeah.
and that's exactly how I've treated this company as well. I tell every customer this when I talk to them on the phone. You hear me? I talk this into the ground on diminished value. You have to be a threat. If you're not a threat, they're just going to ignore you. And I've made a business out of being a threat. I don't
Yeah,
bluff. That's what I've
they're
known.
gonna deny. They're gonna make up things, and they're gonna try to get you to question that your expert's right. They're gonna tell you what should be in your report. You need to go get
Yeah.
dealer quotes and all this stuff. They do that all the
Yeah,
time.
that's not how that works. Well, whatever. You're not
Or
going to
the
out expert me on that,
another thing is the person wants to file a small claim suit, and then they go and sue the insurance carrier, and they're like, whatever, or like they
Yeah,
threaten, we're gonna sue
all you got to
you.
do.
Yeah.
Right. And the insurance adjuster knows that immediately and they laugh at you.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you don't understand anything. So you have to be a credible threat. You have to be that person that is, going to get their claim settled. And we know what the tendencies of all the carriers are. I know which carrier is going to do what, who are the hardest to deal with. We have some gentlemen's agreements with some of these carriers. They're like, it's petty. Well, let's go ahead and settle this one and we
They'll
know what to
negotiate.
expect on it. And these are the more honest companies. There's a few companies that hire us too only the honest companies hire us because they want to know the right answer. But
Yeah.
that's what you gotta understand with diminished value is it is hard to get it done. It's a technical appraisal. Insurance companies do not teach that to their appraisers or their staff, and there's ways to expose that. And you have to know the right thing to say. Okay, well, send me your credentials, your CV, and send me one appraisal that you've written in the last year. You
And
can
one
redact it
trial
and
that you
stuff,
sat in as an expert on the stand. So send us that.
and just send that to me and your appraisal report, and we'll look at it and see where we differ. Why is your appraisal different than my appraisal? Because you should be just looking at market data, right? In the right market, in the right time, and they should be similar. And there are a couple of other companies that do a pretty good job.
Yeah.
And those are people that talk to me, and then I talk to them. It's like the good
Collaborate.
experts know each other, and
There's
I
enough
think
business
that's
here for all of
probably
us. That's the thing. It's like there's enough. We don't have to beat each other's throats because there's a million wrecks every day that people need help with. So, that's the good thing about being an appraiser. We're a small little circle in the US. So, there's who knows, but it's not a huge industry. So
maybe 200 independent appraisers, maybe that are independent auto specialists on
auto,
property damage. There's
yeah,
lots of appraisers, but
home,
the guys that focus on auto, they are few and far between, and I know all of them. I'm telling
yeah,
you, I pretty much know every one of them. Ever so often, there'll be a new one come in, and I know it. It's like, you're new, and
yeah.
so
Well, if
I
you need
guess
help with
I
the
guess
diminished
that's
value
it.
claim,
Yeah.
just reach out to us. Get on and get a free claim consultation on our website. We'll run some numbers. We'll try to tell you where we think our appraisal would come in a ballpark, way so that you can decide if it's worth it for you to spend on an appraisal because it isn't always worth it for you to spend on an appraisal. And we pride ourselves on telling the truth on those things. So we hope you enjoyed our episode and we'll be back next week.